This is a photo I took of some Canadian geese on a field just down the road from where I live. During the times of the year when they migrate to points south in fall and then northward in spring, the field functions as a sort of rest area where they all land together. If you ask me, I think they're all really kind of sticking their necks out by doing so. But geese are one bird of a feather that really does flock together. But it's not only so as they fly in a large flock. Outside of perhaps captivity, it is quite rare that you'll ever see one of them all alone. Whenever one needs to break away from the flock and rest, there are at least two that will remain with it to make sure that it is not left behind all by itself. What can we learn from an example as such? What of what's good for the goose and good for the gander is also good for all of us? In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verses 9 through 12, King Solomon of Israel had this to say: "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken." This passage is commonly quoted and discussed in wedding ceremonies. However, that is actually just one application in the context of a greater principle. I believe that this principle has more to do with 4 benefits of being part of something with someone else. Not necessarily with merely one other person, but with more, perhaps a group, a team, a community, a movement. Anything like that versus going at something alone. I believe these 4 benefits serve quite well to foster the spirit of camaraderie and harmony that is known for arising when we are united around a common cause, a common professional cause. This is one of the reasons why I enjoy attending conferences for which we come together as world language teachers. At NTPRS and at other conferences, we often see this spirit of camaraderie in action as a trade wind powers along the sails of a schooner out on the ocean. Indeed, conferences are always something that I look forward to. Some of it is because of the treasure trove of resources and also the hotbed of activity toward the cause of developing practical skill in meaningfully imparting what we know to those to whom we teach. However, much of why has more to do with something that underlies it all. This is the spirit of camaraderie, out of which not only professional, but even personal relationships have a way of emerging among us. As part of this dynamic, I believe we really do see in action many examples of what I believe Solomon was getting at in writing the words of our passage. 2 are better than 1 because they have a good return for their labor. In terms of how I've seen this one in action, one of the best examples was a presentation at the 2015 NTPRS conference in Washington, D.C. by Lori Clark and Carol Gopp. For me, what really stood out about it was the way they worked so well together as they presented. As fine as they were as two of our colleagues presenting some of their wisdom, it really was about much more than just that. It included elements of a comedy act, with Lori playing the straight man and with Carol playing the comic. So Lori, in the coaching workshops, we can take pictures with our cell phones, right? Carol, as we've been told, that's only if the person being coached says it's all right. What was so remarkable about this was that it was all so obviously incorporated on the fly, ad lib, unrehearsed. Being the two really good friends I know that they are, it was as if one automatically knew how to respond in kind to the other. They were having fun with it. And their spirit in working together complemented very well what it's all about. I've attended a lot of presentations and workshops over the years, but Lori and Carol, even now, my hat is off to you. Even now, your example really does stand out for all the rest of us in terms of how to work together. The good return for their labor came not only from the time they invested to prepare, but also because of the years they have known each other and worked together. In Ecclesiastes, Solomon goes on to say that if either of them falls down, one can help the other up. How does it feel to be a beginner who is nervous about giving it a try for the first time and doing so in front of actual persons in a coaching session? Who has ever stumbled at applying, let's say, a circling technique? Who has ever felt a certain lacking in the area of self-assurance because of it? What kind of difference does it make when a seasoned colleague is there to encourage that beginner with some wise words of affirmation? But consider the colleague who only goes at it alone. Let's say they are trying to make sense out of step-by-step instructions of a dry and ambiguously written curriculum manual, at least so for the said colleague's frame of reference. But the colleague doesn't reach out to other colleagues for help and understanding. Maybe later, as they attempt to present the lesson, they become overwhelmed and fall flat on their face. Think about it. But pity the one who falls and has no one to help them up. In a case as such, how can we really not feel sorry? And if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? One synonym of the term to lie down is to rest. Summer is the time of really a number of teaching conferences. It is during this time of year that most of us are not in the classroom. We are at rest from it. For most of us, it's a break from grading, lesson planning, and other routine matters at school that often require a fair chunk of our time. What kind of difference does it make when we're all with each other in person? As we reflect on the school year, listening to each other as we swap stories and share ideas, in what ways will this help us in the areas of refreshment, relaxation, and reassurance, so we are all the better warmed up in time for the first school bell on the first day of fall? Seriously, what can this do for you? Having someone there alongside who has been there really does help in keeping us going. It keeps up the endurance, and so with seeing through all kinds of things toward completion. Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. I don't think it's any big news to anyone here when I say that teaching, no matter where and to whom, will at times be stressful. Our line of work is about people. Anytime you have that element, you do have the potential for stress. Ever had to deal with a learner struggling with the combination of effective filter and personal perfectionism? Or how about a parent who comes after you for an issue involving their son or daughter in your classroom, but is unwilling to even at least give your side of it a fair hearing? But how can even something like moral support on the part of a seasoned colleague over a cup of coffee make a difference? Someone who really knows how it is from having been there, who has been around the block with that one a few times, who has actually walked that kind of a mile in the same kind of moccasins in a way that they know how to reassure you that you do not stand alone in facing stresses such as these and others. As I bring this meditation to a close, I wish to consider a few verses out of chapter 2 of Philippians. Therefore, if there is any encouragement in Christ, if there is any consolation of love, if there is any fellowship of the Spirit, any affection and compassion, make my joy complete by being of the same mind, maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose. Do nothing from selfishness or vain conceit, but with humility of mind, regard one another as more important than yourselves. Do not merely look out for your own personal interests, but also for the interests of others. Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus. In what ways could what's described here in Philippians foster what's mentioned in Ecclesiastes? How might the points in each of these two passages complement each other, in order that no matter what language we teach and to whom, we might all delight in a better return for our labor? That no matter what, we might rest together, supporting each other and sharing with each other about what's going well in our classrooms, all of it in order to keep each other not only warm, but encouraged, current and sharp, versus flying solo and possibly more in peril of growing cold and ultimately burning out. That no matter what, we may always have each other's backs, rather than being individually trapped in overwhelming isolation. For instance, when it comes to job-related stresses, especially for the upcoming school year. As you interact with other colleagues anytime, anywhere, and for that matter, any others who would be within your sphere of influence. Camaraderie and harmony among us as world language teachers, just as it's described in Ecclesiastes 4:9-12. How might it be the trade wind in the sails of our schooner over the troughs and swells on this ocean? Between the lines, what might Solomon's words have to say to us, that we may better strive together toward a more common cause, whether professionally, whether otherwise? If what is good for the goose is good enough for the gander, in God and Christ, how might it also be good enough for us? Let's all stick our necks out for it.